How does the last 30 months or so compare to those two times?
Yeah, well, I would say I view it as before the present correction. There were four other corrections I lived through: the savings and loan crisis, the early 2000s,
Dotcom,
the Dotcom and the credit
9/11.
crisis, 9/11, then the GFC, and then what I refer to as the Great Slog, which was from October of 15 through March of 21. And in that slog, the volume of sales went down 56%. Dollar volume, the number of properties sold dropped 54% in New York. Value only went down by about 10 to 12%. But that was a tough period. And then the current thing we're in really is a correction caused by the Fed. They started raising interest rates in March of 22. By August, September of 22, it started to really profoundly impact the real estate market. And the 12-month hiatus we had from the Great Slog to what we're in now was gone.
Yeah.
And this has been a tough one. But the big difference in the last 30 months is that in the past four corrections, every property type was losing value, just to different degrees. This cycle, different property types are performing differently. I would argue in New York today, the retail sector is doing pretty well, but it was negatively impacted 3 or 4 years before everything else. And I think part of that was a transition of retail into industrial. As industrial went up, retail kind of went down. And I think those two are really linked. So it's a little fuzzy. And we could talk for hours about the hybrid between that. But retail's doing well. Our industrial market's doing well. The hotel market's on fire in New York. But multifamily and B and C office, which are the two classes of buildings that we have the most of those buildings of, are struggling mainly because of interest rates. And a lot of folks have debt at 3.5%.
Right.
Placement debt is twice as expensive. Plus, you got to put 25 or 35% cash in to effectuate those refis.
That's right.
So it's really causing a lot of pain. So I was on CNBC back in February. One of the things that led to my firing, but it was on CNBC, and I said to my friend Brian Sullivan, we're going to see the biggest sell-off in history in 2025 in New York. And at the time, a lot of people gave me grief for that, because if you looked at first quarter numbers, it was about flat from where we were last year. But if you annualize the first 3 quarters, we're on pace to be up about 60% in volume. I think by the end of the year, we'll be up 80 to 90% from last year. And next year, I think we are going to have the biggest sell-off in history, because we have something happening that has never happened before in the 40 years I've been doing this, where you have using Manhattan as a microcosm of the market, south of 96th Street, which is prime Manhattan, there's 27,649 buildings. The average turnover rate of that stock is 2.6% annually. And interestingly, 2.6% at the end of the 80s, 2.6 end of the 90s, 2.6 end of the noughts, 2.6 end of last quarter. So it reverts to the trend line. And we've had below trend turnover for 7 years in a row. Even during the S&L crisis, it was only 4 years below trend.
Yeah.
So we have a situation where we're going to have a very robust group of discretionary sellers who own properties in those sectors that are doing well, in the retail sector, in the hotel sector, the industrial sector, saying, hey, I wanted to sell, but the prices weren't good enough. But now those sectors are doing well. So, hey, I can get out, and I can get out at a good price. I wanted to sell. I haven't been able to. Now I'm going to sell. They're discretionary sellers. They're going to be very, very active. On the other side of the coin, we have the folks who have those 3.5% mortgages that can't refi, don't have the capital to put in to effectuate a refi, or are choosing not to put fresh capital into the old asset, that are going to be non-discretionary sellers. So usually in good times, you have a bunch of discretionary sellers driving the market. Bad times, you have non-discretionary sellers driving the market. We're going to have both of them active at the same time for the first time ever. So with the turnover, 2.6 has been the average. The lowest we ever had was 1.2% in 2009. The highest it ever was 4.3% in 2012. We'll have turnover 5-6% next year.
Wow.
So it's going to be a good year. It's going to be a very, very active year, and we're doing everything to gear up to take advantage of that.